أشراف مطلوب وطالبه لله أكرام من يمشي على قدم. العلم نور مبين يستضيء به أهل السعادات والجهال في الظلم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. أما بعد. طيب. Just a quick recap on what we started last week, or the last lesson, which was باب المسح على الخفين, or باب مسح الخفين. We mentioned that the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah mentioned this chapter after mentioning sifatul wudu, after mentioning babu sifatul wudu, after talking about how to make wudu and the description of the wudu. He mentioned babul masah al-khuffayn, because the khuffayn they go over a part of the limbs that are washed for wudu, namely the feet. And wiping over the socks, the ahadith that have been narrated are mutawatir, meaning they've come from many chains of narration. And some of the scholars, rahmatullahi alayhim ajma'in, mention that it is also mentioned in the Quran, وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, by saying وَأَرْجُلِكُمْ by غَسْلِ أَرْجُلِكُمْ, and also the ijma' of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah talked about muddatul mashi, the time that it is allowed for a person to wipe over the socks. And he said that it is a night and a day for the person that is resident, and it is 3 days with its nights for a person that is traveling. So for the traveler it's 72 hours, and for the person that is muqim or resident that is not traveling, it is 24 hours. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala talked about a mas'ala which is bidayat waqt al-masih. After saying that we have 24 hours or 72 hours, a day and a night or 3 days to wipe over the socks, we now need to know, when do we start counting? From what point do we start counting? Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, min hadathin ba'da lubsin, min hadathin ba'da lubsin. So he says rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'ah, that you start your time after the first time, or at the first time you break your wudu, after obviously putting your socks on. So he says you start your time, your 24 hours or your 72, they start when you break your wudu after putting on your socks. So suratul mas'ala, if a person wakes up for Fajr at 6 a.m., washes or makes wudu, washes their feet, and then put socks on. At 6 a.m. before Fajr. Put socks on, or khuf on. Then, after praying Salatul Fajr, they eat camel's meat at 7 a.m. They eat their breakfast with camel's meat at 7 a.m. According to the mu'allif, the time starts what time? 7 a.m. Why? Because that is the min hadathin ba'da lubsin. It is the first time that you've broken your wudu, and as we shall study today, eating camel's meat nullifies the wudu. Having said that, we also said there's another opinion, which is the stronger opinion, which is what? It starts from the hadith. That's what the Shaykh said now. Okay, we mentioned a different opinion, which was stronger. The first wudu that you wipe over your socks, just like that. First wiping, I want you to be precise. You're right, you're on the right track, Lakin I want you to be precise.
So if you break it and then
Ahsant. You wipe over the socks, or the time starts, the first time you wipe over your socks after breaking your hadith, after breaking your wudu. So, mathalan, the individual that we said he had his breakfast at 7 a.m., what time did he break his wudu? 7 a.m., because that's when he had the camel's meat. طيب. Lakin, he goes to work and he wants to pray dhuhr now. For Salatul Zuhr, which is at 1:30, he makes wudu at 1 p.m. He makes wudu and he wipes over his socks. When does the wiping start? It starts at 1 p.m. Why? Because he's put the socks on. He put it on what time? 6 a.m. He broke his wudu what time? 7 a.m. Lakin during this time he didn't do anything. He did not make wudu, he didn't do anything. Lakin at 1 p.m. he started to make wudu. He made wudu and he wiped over his socks. That is the time of, that is when his 72 hours or his what? 24 hours start. And the evidence for this is the Prophet ﷺ mentioned wiping. إِذَا تَوَضَّأَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَمْسَحْ خُفَيْهِ صح? So the Prophet ﷺ connected the khuf with the masih. And likewise all of the ahadith. So for the time to even start, there has to be masih that has taken place. So that is the time that it starts. Then the Shaykh said, rahimahullah, mentioned a few masail. على طاهر مباح ساتر للمفروض. على طاهر, it has طاهر, it has to be something that is pure. So the socks have to be pure. And we mentioned that when we're talking about najis, it is of two types. Najisun hukmi and najis aini. Or we can say najis, something which is najis, like pigskin mathalan. Or something which is mutanajjis, which becomes najis. For example, your normal socks and then a child urinates on your socks. It becomes najis. So we said that some of the fuqaha, rahmatullahi alayhim ajma'een, they say that you can make wudu with socks that are dirty. You can, dirty as in najis, not dirty as in needing to be washed only. Lakin dirty as in najis. You can make wudu on them, lakin you cannot what? Pray. Lakin you cannot pray. Just like you can have a thobe on that is najis when you're making wudu, likewise they say you can have socks on that are najis when you're making wudu. Mubah, it has to be permissible. Permissible meaning it has to be permissible for you to wear, so it can't be silk khuf, for example, for men, nor can it be stolen in that sense, mubah. And then we mentioned the other point, the other opinion is that it is permissible even if it is not mubah. Satir al-mafrood, it has to cover the actual part that is normally washed. It has to cover the part that is normally washed. So you cannot perform wiping on ankle socks. Then the Shaykh says, يَثْبُتُ بِنَفْسِهِ, it has to stay on its own. Meaning that when you put the socks on, you don't need anything to tie it up. It just stays on its own. Who remembers anything we said regarding this? No. Even if it is tied, as long as it sticks to your feet, on your feet, and it doesn't fall off, then it is fine. Whether it stays on its own or whether you use elastic band or any other rope or anything like that to use it. طيب. ومن خف وجورب, it can be from khuf, socks, leather socks, or jawrab, thick socks, or normal socks. طيق صفيق عفوا. It has to be thick socks. It has to be thick socks. Lakin, we mentioned the other opinion that if it's, as long as it can be considered socks, then it is permissible. Then the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned also the imama of a man and a khumr or the khimar of the woman, as long as it is hard, difficult, and there's mashaqqa, difficulty in taking it off, then they can wipe over this. في حدث أصغر. Then he also said that you can only wipe over the socks if you require hadath, if you fall into, or if you do hadath al-asghar, minor impurity. Why? Because with hadath al-asghar, you need, akbar, you need what? You need ghusl to wash the whole body. طيب. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, and I believe we stopped here, صح? في حدث أصغر, لا, وجبيرة, we stopped on this note, صح? وجبيرة, أي وعلى جبيرة. So from now on, it is not revision, this is the new lesson. وجبيرة ما لم أو لم تتجاوز قدر الحاجة ولو في أكبر. Now in this mas'ala, the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala rahmatan wasi'a is referring to wiping over the jabira. To wiping over the jabira. And the jabira can be a cast, a bandage, a splint, anything that is used to cover the body, any part of the body that has a wound on it or that is broken. لم تتجاوز قدر الحاجة, as long as it doesn't pass the necessity, the part that you need to wipe over, the part afwan that needs to be what? That needs to be covered, and anything else that you need to cover by way of default. So for example, if مثلا I break my middle finger, if I break this finger, the doctor will more often than not say what? I need to put these two together, the middle finger and the index finger, صح? So it is permissible. That is the qadr al-hajjah. That is the need. Why? Because this middle one is what? That is the one that is broken. So it needs to be covered up with a bandage. But this one needs to support it. Therefore, this second one, index, is also a what? A hajjah. It comes under qadr al-hajjah. طيب. How about this other finger? The one on the other side, not the index, the other side of the middle finger. How about if he covers all three up? Is that permissible? No, it is not permissible because there is no need. As long as he's got enough support for the middle finger that is broken, then the index finger and the middle finger can be covered up. Is that understood? So that is what is meant by qadr al-hajjah, as long as the need is there. And with regards to that, the hajjah, the qa'idah says, الضرورة تبيح المحظورات, صح? الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. You might want to write that down. This qa'idah and another one that I'm going to mention, inshallah. So with these qawa'id, although I mention them in a specific context, like they will help you in the long run and when you're studying the Sharia as a whole. So right, القاعدة الفقهية تقول, the قاعدة الفقهية says, الضرورة تبيح المحظورات. The الضرورة, the necessity or need, تبيح المحظورات, make the things that are impermissible, permissible to do. So مثلا the finger that I had broken, I mentioned, the fingers, it is wajib for me to wipe, it is wajib for me to what? Wash my hands with wudu, صح? When I'm making wudu. Lakin there's a need here. الضرورة, there's a need here. فهي تبيح المحظورات. The actual, I can't wash the finger now, therefore I need to cover it with a bandage. Therefore I need to do mashi, as we shall see. لكن there's another قاعدة تقول, there's another قاعدة that says الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. الضرورة تقدر بقدرها. That the necessity in question has to be limited to the need. The necessity in question has to be limited to the need. The necessity in question has to be limited, or the permissibility has to be limited to the need. The permissibility has to be limited to the need, or is limited to the need. So for example, when I mentioned the finger, the middle finger being broken, and the doctor needing to support it with the index finger, that is the darura. We've got a darura, sah? So it is not permissible for someone to say, you know what, khalas, it's a darura, I'm going to cover the whole hand. La. We say to him, there's another qa'idah that you also need to keep in mind, which is tuqaddaru biqadriha. The need, the permissibility is restrained to the need. So you cannot now get a third finger and cover it up. Is that understood? For example, مثلا, if a woman goes to the hospital and there's a tabib, a male doctor, طيب, and her ankle is broken, and there's no female doctors to fix it, to put cast on it and so on. It is permissible for the male doctor to what? To put the cast on. Lakin, when it comes to uncovering the leg, where does she uncover up? From the waist downwards? La, to where? Just the knee. Not even up to the calf muscle. Lakin, just past the knee. Then the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, walau fi akbarin. Walau fi akbarin. Walau fi akbarin ila halliha. The Shaykh rahimahullah now is referring to, so you might want to write next to walau fi akbarin, write ashar al-muallifu rahimahullah أشار المؤلف رحمه الله إلى بعض الفروق بين المسح على الخفين والمسح على الجبيرة. Because obviously this chapter talks about wiping over the socks. Like the Shaykh said, rahimahullah, bab masih al-khuffayn, right? So the chapter was, that's why, so the chapter talks about wiping over the socks. That's why some of the scholars, they say, babul mamsuhat, the chapter of the mamsuhat, things that are wiped. Right? And that is ashmal, or more general. Lakin, the Shaykh rahimahullah, after talking about wiping over the socks, so that the student or the person that is reading it does not think that wiping over the socks has the same rule in every case, in every scenario, as wiping over the bandage, he now is telling you some of the differences between the two. Between what two? Jabira and Mas'al al-Khuffayn. And the first one is walau fi akbar. Walau fi akbar. Even if it is the major hadith. So for example, or Surah al-Mas'ala, a person breaks مثلا their leg and they've got a massive cast from the ankle upwards on the foot. When it comes to wudu, what do? They wipe over the foot, sah? طيب. What about ghusl? Do we say you need to take the cast off? Because with wiping you need to take with the socks off, if you need ghusl, you need to take your socks off. When you've got socks on and you need a ghusl, what do? Take the socks off. طيب, what about a bandage? If you've got a big massive cast on your leg, on your foot, and you need ghusl, what are you going to say? Go take a trip down to the A&E and then say, take it out, I need a ghusl. La. What do? Khalas, you wash your body as normal, lakin excluding the foot. Excluding the foot. So that's what he means, rahimahullah, walau fi akbar. Walau fi akbar. And that goes for any other part of the body that is broken. Obviously the limbs connected to wudu. Another difference, he says, ila halliha, until it is taken apart, or until it is taken off the limb. And this is contrary to what? To wiping over the socks. Because when do we stop wiping over the socks? When the time finishes. So that is the second difference that the Shaykh rahimahullah, he mentions. So the second difference is that wiping over the socks is limited to 24 hours or 72 hours. As for a jabira or a bandage or a cast, then it is until the bandage is taken off. Another difference is that wiping over the socks is a rukhsa, it's a concession. It is a concession. Whereas wiping over the bandage or cast is a azima. Can someone remind us of the meaning of azima and rukhsa? Who remembers the meaning of azima and rukhsa? In reality, everyone should know because we discussed it last lesson and it was one of the first masail that we discussed in the last lesson. And it is very important because there's a lot of masail connected to rukhsa and azima. Ja'far. Ahsant. Al-azima is the asl of the hukum. It is the ruling that there's an evidence for, and that is the norm. And the rukhsa is the concession, the opposite. So for example, wiping or washing your feet for wudu, it is what? Azima or rukhsa? It is the azima. What about wiping over the socks? It is rukhsa, صح? طيب. That is one difference. In terms of ruling, what is the difference? The hukum. The azima you must do. There's no choice with regards to azima. مثلا Ramadan comes in and you need to fast. Huh? That is a azima. You can't say tomorrow I need to think about whether I want to fast or not. لا. Like let's say you're traveling tomorrow. You can consider it. Shall I fast or shall I not fast? Why have you got that choice? Because it is a rukhsa. طيب. So one of the differences between al-jabira is that jabira is a azima. You must wipe over it. You don't have a choice. If it covers up some of the, or any limb that you normally wipe over, then you need to wipe over. Or wash, then you need to wipe over. As for the khuf, no one's forced to wipe over it. The person could take it off and ala tul, because it is a rukhsa. طيب. Another difference is that the khuf, you only wipe over the top. The khuf, you wipe over the top. As for the jabira, you wipe all of it. The jabira, you wipe all of it. Suratul Mas'ala, let's say you wipe over your socks and this is your foot. You only need to wipe what? The top part. You run your wet hands through the top part, on the top part. As for a bandage, let's say you've got it up until your elbow, your whole hand, then you wipe over the whole hand. طيب. Another condition is another difference is for the bandage, for the khuf, you needed what? Before you put it on, you need to be on wudu, tahara. You needed to be on tahara. Another difference is that with bandage lakin, you don't have to be on wudu. With a bandage, you don't have to be on wudu. Why is that? Who chooses when they break their hand? No, you don't choose. Normally it gets put on in an emergency. Lakin, if you know, for example, you're going into surgery and then you're going to wipe over your socks, your jabira after that, then if you make wudu, then khalas, you can call it khuruj min al-khilaf. طيب. Another difference is that the khuf covers where? The khuf covers where? The foot, the qadam. Like in the bandage can cover where? Any part of the body that you're meant to wash. طيب. Then the Shaykh says رحمه الله إذا لبس ذلك بعد كمال الطهارة. If he wears this after complete tahara. طيب. Right there, right after إذا لبس ذلك بعد كمال الطهارة, right, أي الطهارة أي بعد الطهارة المائية. لا من طهارة مسح أو تيمم. طيب. Is that understood? طيب. مثلا سورة المسألة complete طهارة. إذا لبس ذلك بعد كمال الطهارة. complete طهارة. مثلا الآن let's say a person cannot find wudu, cannot find water, or there's no water around. What do? Perform tayammum. And then they stand up for prayer and they pray, sah? So he has prayed his tahara, he's prayed his salah on tahara or other than tahara? He's prayed on tahara, sah? We say he mutatahhir, he has tahara. Ahsantum. What about if a person he wipes over his socks within the 24 hours and then he stands up for prayer? Do we say that person prayed with tahara or do we say he prayed without tahara? Huh? with tahara. He prayed with tahara. Mutatahhir, he prayed with tahara. So both scenarios that I've mentioned are what? With tahara, sah? طيب. How about if a person wakes up in the morning, makes wudu, washes their feet, washes their feet, and prays the salah. Have they prayed that salah in tahara or not? Huh? On tahara, sah? طيب. With regards to these three scenarios, who can repeat them? These three scenarios I just mentioned now. Tayammum, prays salah. He's on tahara, sah? Second, Mahdi. A person wipes over his socks and then prays. Is he tahir? No. Third, wakes up in the morning, washes his feet, makes wudu, washes his feet, sah? Tahara. طيب. Which tahara are you allowed to wipe after putting your socks on? Which tahara are you allowed to wipe after? Salman. The washing of the feet. Agree? All of them? طيب. All of them, so let's say for example now, when Ali made tayammum, we said to him, you can pray because you're on tahara, sah? Then he puts his socks on. 2 hours later, he gets hold of water. He finds an ocean down the road. He makes wudu. He's got his socks on. He doesn't need to take it off, sah? He wipes over his socks. Is that permissible? I never said tayammum. I'm not saying he can make tayammum. I'm saying to you now he wants to make wudu from this ocean and he wants to wipe over his socks. Lesh, why? Wasn't he not on tahara? Let's say the ocean runs away somewhere. Now there's no ocean. Is he not allowed to pray? Abadan, no, you don't have to. We haven't reached tayammum, but no, you don't have to.
In the hadith, the Prophet said, I washed over them before. In the hadith.
Washed over them? Like he said, إِنِّي أَدْخَلْتُهُمَا طَاهِرَتَيْنِ I put them on pure, while they were pure. Kind of, nah. So the thing is, all of these three, although they are taharas, like in the tahara that is referred to by the kamal al-tahara is al-tahara al-ma'iyya. So a person is only allowed to wipe over the socks after washing their feet. After washing their feet. So it is not enough to say, I was tahir, like when you want to put on socks. That tahur, or that tahirness, that tahara, has to be a tahara ma'iyya that you've made wudu on. In any case, if you write that ta'liq later on, you'll understand it as it is. And everyone's written it down, صح? طيب. بعد كمان الطهارة لأن the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said إذا توضأ أحدكم فليمسح خفيه.
You consider someone who wiped over the imam as ma'iyah, even though they wash over their feet?
لا, the imam is to come. The imam, we're going to, that masala I believe is going to come on the matan. Some of the scholars, there's a difference whether there's whether you have to have wudu before putting it on or not. Lakin it is not the same. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, وَمَسْحُ وَمَنْ مَسَحَ فِي سَفَرٍ ثُمَّ أَقَامَ. You with me, sir? طيب. Now, you might want to put as title on the side, which is تغيير حال من مسح خفيه. تغيير حال من مسح خفيه من إقامة إلى سفر. من إقامة إلى سفر أو العكس. So the Shaykh rahimahullah now is going to talk about a person who wiped over their socks. Lakin they were resident, then they started to travel. Understood? Then they went traveling. Or a person, meaning how long has he still got left? Or a person who was traveling, then comes back to his home city. So it means he's no longer traveling. Is that understood? Or a person who has a doubt. Or a person who has a doubt. طيب. So the Shaykh says, وَمَنْ مَسَحَ فِي سَفَرٍ ثُمَّ أَقَامَ. Whoever, مَنْ مَسَحَ فِي سَفَرٍ, whoever wipes while traveling. مَنْ مَسَحَ فِي سَفَرٍ. He wipes over his socks when he's traveling. مثلا, now you live in London. You're in Birmingham or any other city. You wipe over your socks. من مسح في سفر. So you've wiped over your socks. ثم أقام. Then you reach London. أو عكس ذلك. أو العكس. What is the opposite to that? You were in London, you wiped over your socks, and then you travel to where? To another city. طيب. أو شك في ابتدائه. Or he has a doubt as to where he started. Was he traveling when he started? Or was he a resident when he started? The Shaykh says, فَمَسَحَ مُقِيمٍ. فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. That is the hukum, right? فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. On top of it, right? Al-hukum. On top of it, right? Al-hukum. طيب. من مسح في سفر ثم أقام. A person wiped. مثلا, they were in Birmingham and they wiped over their socks. Then they reach London. Let's say they were in Birmingham at 6 p.m. At 6 p.m. they were in Birmingham, they wiped over their socks. Then they travelled back to London. They get to London at, let's say, 10 p.m. They get to London at 10 p.m. When they were in Birmingham, how long were they allowed to wipe for? 3 days. They get to London at 10 p.m. From that point onwards, when they get to London, how much longer are they allowed to wipe for? 24 hours from what time? Huh? That whenever your time started. Whenever your time started when you were traveling. Let's say he wiped over his socks after wudu at 6 p.m. and he got to London at 10 p.m. From 6 p.m. 24 hours, that's what we count. Is that understood? واضح? Mubarak, don't look at the book, look later on. طيب. أو عكس. Or he started his traveling when he was in London مثلا, and he wiped at 6 p.m. 6 p.m. in London, and he went traveling. If he stayed in London, how long would he have had? 24 hours. Lakin he starts traveling. That 24 hours becomes what? 72 hours. So today is a Saturday, he wipes now, and he's got until what? Until Monday evening 6 p.m. Because now he's traveling, صح? طيب. أو شك في ابتدائه, or he has a doubt in the time that he started. A shak about the time that he started. With this one, it's different because you do. اليقين لا يزول بشك. You act upon what you're certain of. Whatever time you were certain of that you started, then you wipe over that. طيب. Lakin, with the second scenario, who can give me an example of the one that the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned? Remember when I said 6 p.m. he starts at London, 6 p.m. he started at London, and he goes traveling. We said what? He has what? Al-Hukm of, therefore he can wipe how many? 70. According to the Shaykh, he doesn't say that. He says what? فَمَسْحَ مُقِيمٍ فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. He wipes like the muqim. So this 6 o'clock now, tomorrow when he's in that city, at 6 p.m., that's when his time finishes. Now the reason behind that is that with regards to that ibadah, there were 2 times involved. طيب. And that 2 times is, he could have either carried on with 72 hours, or he could have carried on and had what? Only 24 hours when he's traveling. Why? Because he's got a mixture of 2 situations. There was a time where he was what? Musafir, and there was a time he was what? Muqim. Because of that mixture, they say we give precedence to the safer option, the ihtiyat. And that is what is known as al-hadr. So write this qa'idah down. إذا اجتمع. By the way, this is according to the mu'allif. Like it's a side benefit. The qa'idah. إذا اجتمع حاضر ومبيح. إذا اجتمع حاضر ومبيح. If you combine something that is permissible and not permissible in the same place, they are both found. غُلِبَ جانب الحضر. غُلِبَ جانب الحضر. The side of the impermissibility takes over. In our case here, the side of the safer option takes over. مثلا سورة another example of this qa'idah. Let's say a man wants to get married. طيب. And then there are 2 women that he wants to get married to. His mother says to him, one of these girls, I breastfed her when she was young. So she's your ukht min al-ghada'a. One of them, I don't know which one, but one of them, they used to live near us. Therefore, one of them, I breastfed them for 1.5 years when she was a baby. And there's only 2 of them, صح? طيب. What's the possibility of marrying your sister from ghada'a out of these 2? 50-50, صح? طيب. اجتمع حاضر ومبيح. Something that was permissible for you is combined with something that is not permissible. So what do we do here? غُلِبَ جانب الحضر. The impermissibility gets given precedence. So we say to him, these 2, you can't marry any one of them. Marry the other 7 billion, like you can't marry these 2. Why? Because there's a possibility that it could be impermissible. Is that understood? طيب. So this is the same scenario for here. Because the Shaykh says, rahimahullah, أو العكس, underline عكس. What does عكس mean? Opposite. So you were traveling, you were resident, you were in London, and you wiped over your socks at 6 o'clock. As a resident, you're only allowed 24 hours. Then you went traveling. Traveling is meant to make you what? Al-mashaqqatu tajlibu at-taysir. Difficulty brings about ease. Like the Shaykh says to you, rahmatullahi alayhi rahmatan wasi'ah, فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. Even when you travel, you're what? You've only got the time of a person that was resident. Because there was because your traveling consists of 2 parts. There was a part that you wiped over your socks and you was a resident where you had 24 hours. And there was a part that you were what? Traveling and you had 72 hours. When we're doing tadyiq, when we're limiting your rukhsa or the concession due to taking the safer option, what do we do? The Shaykh says, فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. Is that understood? That is why مسح مقيم is for the middle one. طيب. How many scenarios did the Shaykh rahimahullah mention in the matan? 3. What is the first one? A person was a traveler and he comes back to his city. How long has he got? 24 hours? Mashu muqim, the 24 hours from the time that he made wudu. Let's say he was traveling. Let's say he wipes today, now, Saturday, 6 p.m. He carries on wiping until tomorrow. And then tomorrow, 7 p.m., he comes into London. Or let's say 2 days actually. Let's say he wipes today until tomorrow. So Monday. 2 days, he's been wiping for 2 full days. When he reaches London, do we say to him, you've still got 24 hours because you're muqim? La, his 24 hours is gone because he was already traveling, wiping for 2 days. Is that understood? So that is the first scenario. When you're traveling and you come back to your city, you can only wipe for however long you had left from the 24 hours, if there is any time. What is the second scenario? The aks. That's the word that says aks. So you can write A, kana muqiman, he was a resident. So you know where it says aks? So you don't get confused later on, right underneath it or on top of it, A, i.e., A means i.e. A, kana muqiman, he was a resident. Thumma safara. So that is what comes under aks. But the fuqaha, because alhamdulillah he's a genius and he doesn't need to repeat it again, and it is a mukhtasar, so instead of saying it again, just says, oh, al-aks. Is that understood? So here is easy, it's easy to understand. Like sometimes in some abwab, the aks, the opposite, is not easy to understand. Remember Bay' al-Ina? When we studied wal-aks, it was a bit confusing, sah? طيب. That's the second mas'ala. What is the third mas'ala that the Shaykh rahimahullah mentioned? Ash-shak fi ibtida'. So he had a doubt when he started. Now the doubt for when you started, that is a different qa'id. Al-yaqeen la yazulu bi-shak. You act upon that which you're sure of. That which you're sure of. فَمَسْحُ مُقِيمٍ. طيب. Then the Shaykh says rahimahullah, وَإِنْ أَحْدَثَ ثُمَّ سَافَرَ قَبْلَ مَسْحِهِ فَمَسَحَ مُسَافِرٍ فَمَسْحُ مُسَافِرٍ. طيب. Here he talks about the fourth scenario. طيب. And now, so you know here with this one, he takes it out of the equation with the aks one that we just wrote. The aks one. So he says here, وَإِنْ أَحْدَثَ, like if he what? Breaks his wudu, ثُمَّ سَافَرَ, then he travels, قَبْلَ مَسْحِهِ, like in wiping up, before wiping over the socks, فَمَسْحُ مُسَافِرٍ, and then he can wipe the mash of a musafir. Who notices anything? Doesn't that contradict what he said earlier on? Naam, that's what it seemed. When أحدث, if he falls into hadath, then ثم سافر قبل مسحه, wipe before wiping over the socks. طيب قبل مسحه فمسح مسافر, then he has to wipe, still has 24 hours. So it seems like here he has taken what into consideration? The first wiping. Whereas before he took into consideration what? Naam. طيب. على أي حال, that is the صورة المسألة. Then the Shaykh says رحمه الله, ولا يمسح القلانس ولفافات وما لا يسقط من القدم, ولا ما يسقط من القدم أو يرى منه بعده. Then he mentions 3 masail ما لا يمسح عليه. Three things that, or ما لا يصح المسح عليه. Three things that, or four things that you can't wipe over. He says, لا يمسح over قلانس. قلنسلة is like the hats that we wear under the shimagh or those sorts of hats. Can't wipe over that. Why? Because it's easy to what? Easy to take off. طيب. ولفافة, or any coverings or bandages. Or any coverings or bandages. Is that understood? Like in reality, like مثلا, if someone doesn't find khuf and they can't find socks, like it is extremely cold, and they use a bandage, their feet are fine. Like, and they use a bandage to cover their feet. In that case, some of the scholars, like Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Taymiyyah, I believe it was, they say you can wipe over that. Why? Because that has more mashaqqa, more difficulty than actually khuf, and even jawrab or socks. طيب. وَلَا مَا يَسْقُطُ مِنَ الْقَدَمِ, and it is not permissible to wipe over that which falls down from the leg, from the foot. And that is understandable. Why? Because then part of that foot is going to be what? Showing at times. So مثلا, if a person puts on really, really baggy socks, and every time they walk, it falls off, then obviously in that case you can't wipe over that. You can't wipe over that. وَيَثْبُتُ بِنَفْسِهِ, not necessarily, because وَيَثْبُتُ بِنَفْسِهِ, what he means that it holds up on its own. It doesn't, he's excluding tying it up. In that surah, he was excluding tying it up. And we said the scholars add that scenario as well, or where you tie it up. Like in here, he's saying it just falls down. أَوْ يُرَى مِنْهُ بَعْدُهُ. أَوْ يُرَى مِنْهُ بَعْدُهُ. What does this mean? أَوْ يُرَى بَعْدُهُ. That, or you can see part of the feet. Meaning what? If it is cut up and it has holes, then you can't wipe over it. If it has holes, according to the Mu'allif rahimahullah, you cannot wipe over it. نعم. أو يرى بعده يقدم محل الفرد. Why? Because it doesn't cover the part that you're meant to cover. The part that you're meant to cover. And they say that, apply that qa'idah that we studied not long ago. إذا اجتمع حاضر ومبيح غلب جانب الحذر. مثلا, the foot is covered up, lakin there are parts of the foot that are showing. Those parts of the foot that are showing, they should be washed, right? And those parts of the foot that are covered up, they need to be what? Wiped over. So we give precedence to the parts that need to be washed, therefore you can't wipe over that. Is that understood? So here what they're referring to is that it can't be a foot, there can't be any holes and so on. Some of them limit it to like 3 hand spans or so on, or finger spans. Like in another opinion that it is permissible to wipe over, regardless of whether it is ripped up, it has holes in it or not. Whether the holes are many or there are no holes in it. Or whether they are just 1 or 2. Or whether they are more. The most important thing is that it is considered a what? A khuf or a sock. As long as it can be considered khuf and sock, then it is fine. Naam, if you can walk, if the person can walk in it without it falling off, that is the dabit. Because obviously if you put your foot up high, then it won't fall off. Sah? Like you can't say that as well. طيب. طيب. Then the Shaykh says رحمه وإن لبس خفا على خف قبل الحدث فالحكم للفوقاني. Now he's going to mention another mas'ala, which is if a person puts on 2 socks. He says وإن لبس, if he puts on khuf, he puts on the second pair of khuf ala khufin on the first khuf. قبل الحدث, before breaking his wudu. فالحكم للفوقاني, then the ruling of wiping is connected to the top pair. Surah al-Mas'ala. Now it's 6 o'clock. A person makes wudu adi, washes his feet. Then, مثلا, they put socks on at 7 p.m. but they're still on wudu. Is that understood? Then they get into the masjid, or they get home about 9 o'clock, they're still on their wudu. And they've got how many pairs of socks on? They've got one pair of socks. One pair. What is one pair? Yani? Is it 1, 2? That is one pair, sah? So he's got one pair of socks on. At 9 o'clock, because it's still cold, but he has his wudu, he puts on another pair of socks. That is what the Shaykh is saying, rahimahullah. فَالْحُكْمُ لِلْفَوْقَانِ, then he can wipe over the top ones. Is that understood? طيب. وَإِنْ لَبِسَ خُفًّا, if he wears a khuf on top of another khuf, before breaking his wudu. What about, if he puts it on after breaking his wudu, can he wipe over the second pair? لا. According to the mu'allif, لا. نعم. فالحكم للفوقاني. طيب. ويمسح أكثر العمامة. ويمسح أكثر العمامة. With regards to the imamah, he says you wipe over the majority of the imamah. The majority of the imamah. Like this. And it is not a must that a person wipes the sides. As long as the person wipes the top part and any part that they can reach, then that is fine. وَيَمْسَحُ أَكْثَرَ الْإِمَامَةِ, the majority of the imamah. وَظَاهِرَ قَدَمِ الْخُفِّ, and he wipes, so now he's talking about the sifa of the khuffain. وَظَاهِرَ قَدَمِ الْخُفِّ, he wipes the top part of the khuf, not the bottom, not the side, not the ankle, he washes where, not the heel, he washes the top part. قال علي رضي الله عنه لو كان الدين بالرأي لكان أسفل الخف أولى بالمسح من أعلاه لكن وقد رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على ظاهر خفيه. Ali radiallahu anhu said, if the religion was based on logic alone, then it would make more sense to wipe over the bottom of the socks, khuf, than the top of the khuf. Why the bottom of the khuf? Because that is the part that gets dirty. The top part doesn't really get dirty, because the bottom part is the part that just follow. So he says, if it was only based on logic, then that would be. Lakin I saw the Prophet ﷺ wipe on the top of the khuf. Min asabi'ihi ila saqihi, then he, from the feet up until just above, just towards the ankle, or on top, just at the top of the foot, at the top of the foot. Dun asfalihi wa aqibihi, rather than, meaning he doesn't wipe the bottom or the back, the bottom or the back. Wa ala jami' al-jabirati. As for the jabira, you wipe all of it. And we studied that not long ago. The jabira, the bandage, you wipe over all of it. Whether it is on your hand, whether it is on your foot, or your head. طيب. Understood? طيب. Then the Shaykh says, رحمه الله, ومتى ظهر بعد محل الفرد بعد الحدث أو تمت مدته استأنف الطهارة. Now he's going to another mas'ala, which is مبطلات المسح. So write down مبطلات المسح, things that nullify the wiping of the socks. Things that nullify the wiping of the socks. And there's two things that I want you to write, or something I want you to write, which is, number one, هناك فرق بين مبطلات المسح. هناك فرق بين مبطلات المسح ومبطلات الوضوء. So there's a difference between things that nullify the wiping and things that nullify wudu. طيب. لكن the mu'allif, so hold on to that inshallah, remind me. لكن the Shaykh says رحمه الله متى ظهر بعد محل الفرد, لكن whenever he says a part of the foot becomes apparent, uncovered, becomes uncovered. بعد الحدث, after wiping, after breaking your wudu, that is استأنف الطهارة, meaning he has to make طهارة again and he can't wipe over those socks. مثلا, a person puts socks on and then the sock, a child مثلا takes the sock off, puts the socks on, makes wudu, نعم متى ظهر بعد مثلا makes wudu at 6 o'clock, washes, puts his socks on. Then at 7 o'clock he breaks his wudu. Then at 7 o'clock he breaks his wudu. Then a few minutes later, a child comes, takes his socks off, takes one of his socks off. can he put the sock back on and wipe? Like, why? Not only because of the hadith, لكن ظهر محل الفرد. The part that it was meant to be covering for the khuf has now is showing it has come uncovered. أو تمت مدته, or the time ends. Or the time what? Ends. The 24 hours ends. The 24 hours finishes. طيب. So the first is if a part of the hadith, if the part of the foot becomes uncovered. According to the Shaykh, what? استأنف طهارة. He makes طهارة again, صح? طيب. He makes طهارة. And the second is what? أو تمت مدته, or his wudu, or his time finishes. Surah al-Mas'ala, you made wudu and you washed your feet, or your time started 6 p.m. yesterday. 6 p.m. yesterday. When does your 24 hours end? 6 p.m. Huh? Yesterday. You live in London. 6 p.m. today. Meaning what? Your time's run out, صح? طيب. What if you're on wudu? According to the Ma'alif, what? Huh? استأنف الوضوء. It's not working. It wasn't a trick question. It says on there. استأنف الوضوء. استأنف الطهارة, meaning he has to make wudu again. Is that understood? So based on this, the Shaykh says there are two things that break your wudu and your wiping. The first is if your foot is showing. If your foot is showing accidentally by a child taking it off, what does that also include? If you take your socks off. If you take your socks off. مثلا, let's say you make wudu at 6, you made wudu at 6 o'clock yesterday. Or let's say you make wudu at 9 o'clock yesterday. 9 p.m. yesterday, you made wudu. صح? And you started your masih. You've got until when? 9 p.m. what? Today, صح? طيب. Now you've still got 3 hours left. Let's say you're on wudu already and you take your socks off. According to the Shaykh, what happens? Can you pray? Now you need to make what? Wudu. You need to make wudu. أو تمت مدته, or your time finishes. Surah al-Mas'ala, you made wudu at 6 p.m. yesterday. You made 6 p.m. yesterday, that's when your time started. You done the wiping, that's when your time started. صح? طيب. And then now it's reached 6 p.m. صح? Meaning now, when it's what? 10 past or quarter past, if you want to pray now, what do you need to do? You need to make wudu. Because the Shaykh says, أو تمت مدته. Because your time of wudu has what? Has finished. Because of the time of wudu has finished. No, it doesn't apply to the imamah. Why? Because it doesn't apply to the imamah. So why do these times wipe out? And because your tahara was limited to when you were wiping. Now that you are no longer going to wipe, then they say you need to renew wudu. Like in the stronger opinion, wallahu a'lam, is that if the time runs out, you still got your wudu, then the only thing that breaks your wudu is what? If you fall into a naqid min nawaqid al-wudu. The only way that your wudu breaks is if you fall into a naqid, something that nullifies your wudu. So your wudu doesn't become invalid because you've taken your socks off, nor does it become invalid because the time has run out. Is that understood? طيب. What are those two questions? Yeah. طيب, on that note, we finished Bab Mas'h al-Khuffayn. Any questions before we go on to the next chapter? مبدلات المسح. لا. نعم. مبدلات الوضوء. صح. أحسنت. جزاك الله خير. What I meant by that is there are things that nullify your wiping, meaning you cannot wipe. but your wudu is still what? Valid. And then there's mubtilatul wudu. That is nawaqidul wudu. مثلا a person, he goes to the bathroom, akamakumullah. So there's a difference between that. Hence, if a person, let's say a person still has time from his wudu. He still has another 7 hours to wipe. And he's on wudu now. He takes his socks off. Right? He's still on wudu, according to the stronger opinion, wallahu a'lam, or to the other opinion, wallahu a'lam. Lakin he cannot put these socks back on and wipe over them. فَهَذَا مُبْطِلْ لِلْمَسْحِ. It nullifies mas'i, but it doesn't nullify wudu. Understood? Likewise, when your time runs out, what is this? مُبْطِلْ لِلْمَسْحِ. You cannot now wipe over because you've passed the 24-hour mark. However, it is not a مُبْطِلْ لِلْوُضُوء. It doesn't nullify your wudu. Okay. Now, in terms of wiping over the jabira, do you wipe once or 3 times as the normal wudu would necessitate? Ahsant. Good question, mashallah. The time that you wipe once. Why? Because ghusli or washing is 3 times. You wash 3 times, whether it's your feet, your hands, your face, so on. Lakin with wiping, al-mashi, normally you only do mashi of one. Like wiping over the socks, wiping over the head. So any type of mashi would be once. Jazakallah khairan. Fadlan. Aks or did. At the moment I can't think of a difference. Like there is a difference. The scholars they mention, the scholars of the Arabic language, they mention there are no 2 words that are mutaradifat in the Arabic language. Meaning they are exactly the same meaning. La. Although in general they show the same meaning, like there are differences. مثلا قدم فلان or جاء فلان. So they say قدم فلان يعني as if he's come from somewhere far. جاء فلان جاء من قريب يعني he came from somewhere nearby. But لكن عكس and did. We'll see inshallah. جاء أتى نعم. So different. جلس قعد. جلس they say it is someone that was lying down and then جلس he sat down. قعد, someone that was standing, I believe it was, and then he sits down. قعد. Although the same meaning, he sat down. And it shows you the richness of the Arabic language. Now, what is the criterion of the thickness of the socks that can be wiped over? طيب. The criterion of the socks is as long as it can be considered socks, whether they are thick or whether they are thin. Whether they are thick or whether they are thin, whether they are see-through or not see-through, as long as they are socks, because there are socks that are see-through, as long as they are socks. Like with tights now, tights that are مثلا really, really thin and see-through, they're not socks. They're not socks. Like with thick tights or leggings that go up all the way to the waist, they can be considered wiping over, you can wipe over them. Show me them. Oh. Now, the question is, if a person wipes over, مثلا, let's say you've got 2 pairs of socks on. You wipe over the top ones, and you're allowed to wipe over both. Let's say you wipe over the top ones. Then you take the top pair off. You've still got the what? The bottom pair on. You can wipe over that. So let's say, for example, now it's 6 o'clock. I made wudu. I washed my feet, and then I put 2 pairs of socks on. 2 pairs of socks on. Then I break my wudu and carry on. And then my time ala kullin starts at 9 p.m. And I've got 2 socks on. Then I wipe over the top pair of socks. Then a few hours later, I take the top pair of socks on. I've still got the bottom pair of socks, bottom pair on. I can wipe over that bottom pair until the time, what? Finishes. Fadl.
You know, in regards to so do you always say the mess to the end? So say you've got a crust on your
Your left hand.
What's your hand? Obviously, and the time and you come to the middle of washing it. Do you negate? Do you delay it and then you do everything else and you do the mess? I like how you think.
It would never have done that. You wipe it when you were meant to wipe that limb. مثلا, you've got a broken arm. Salamakallah. Up to there. So you're meant to wipe over it after you wash your right hand. Then you wipe over this. You don't say, do a wholesale masah. Do shoes count as khuf? The only shoes that I've seen some of the mashayikh give fatwa is over, you know those, the long boots that are worn in the army that go almost up until the calf muscle, and it's difficult for them to take off, they can wipe over that. Like, other than that, no. No, further. If it goes past, which way? Up, down? Above your ankle, you can wipe over it. If it's above the ankle, you can wipe over it. No. No. It depends on the difficulty of taking off. There was a narration, I believe it was from Ali radiallahu anhu, if I remember correctly. And I can't remember it completely at the moment. Now, could you repeat the stronger opinion regarding time passing and socks being removed? Regarding wudu, there's two things here. When you're wiping over your socks, there's two things you need to take into consideration. When does your time end? And have you taken the socks off? They are different to, has your wudu broken? Your time can finish whilst you're on wudu. In that case, you stay on wudu until you break your wudu, but you can't wipe over the socks, even if you still got them on. Is that understood? Or, if you're within your 24 hours, and you've got wudu, and you take your socks off, then your wudu is still what? Valid. You are still on wudu, but you've taken your khuf off. Now you can't put them back on and carry on with wiping. Your wiping has ended, but your wudu hasn't broken. Is that understood? So there's a difference between your wiping. So write down as a qa'idah. There's a difference between the permissibility of wiping ending. There's a difference between the permissibility of wiping ending and the nullifying of your wudu. If you take your socks off, carry on. If you take your socks off, or your time ends, if you take your socks off, or your time ends, and you've still got wudu, you're still on wudu, then your wudu is still sound and valid. Up until you fall into something that usually breaks the wudu. Up until you fall into something that breaks the normal wudu. Is that understood? طيب, let's carry on.
وقل رب زدني